Shadowdark is out in the wild now, and this last week I received my physical copy, and I have been spending the last few days reading through it and just enjoying and absorbing this wondrous tome. But as I've been looking through it, the question remains, am I going to be able to take this and combine it with this? And the more I think about it, the answer is yes. I really do think it's going to be really easy to take what's in Shadowdark and port it over into my ICRPG games. And I want to show you how. Now, the reason why I say that is I do think that there's a lot of familiarity and similarities, like good bones between Shadowdark and ICRPG. I mean, the natural language that's in Shadowdark, the simple mechanics, the shared ethos of what's important in the games are really familiar. And so if you're familiar with ICRPG, Shadowdark is going to be a really easy game to pick up and pull from. The first thing, and probably the easiest thing I think you could use in your ICRPG games, is the tables. ICRPG has a reputation for wondrous tables. I mean, the loot tables alone just are so fun to roll on. But Shadowdark takes that up a notch, and the whole book is filled with excellent tables. So rolling on pretty much any of them and dropping them in your game is going to be really straightforward, and it just bulks out so many options. I mean, can you imagine using the rumors in your story architecture to come up with plans, or some of the encounters for your log tables, or perhaps the NPC generators, the monster generators, the different items, the different treasures? Like, all of them can be rolled on and just dropped in with next to zero effort, and I love that. So the tables alone make this a great resource for your ICRPG games. The second thing is the monsters. I mean, ICRPG's monster manual is fantastic. They have so many unique monsters, but it's a relatively small monster manual, and they don't cover some of the more common or basic or classic monsters you might expect. Shadowdark has a huge collection of monsters of all sorts: dinosaurs, doppelgangers, ghosts, gargoyles, crabs, giants, you name it. Like, it's probably in there, or it could be really easy to DIY and customize them into something you want. As well as the stat blocks in this book, and for each of these monsters, could be really easy to port over to ICRPG. I mean, I was looking at the giant crab for Shadowdark, and I was thinking about how to move it over, because my players know I have an affinity for crabs. And so I was looking at it and going, okay, the giant crab has 24 hit points. Let's make that 2 hearts. It has an attack of +4 with the other pincers, so let's give it a +4 to its weapons. It's got +3 to its strength, so let's give it a +3 to its strength as well. For its actions, it's got 2 pincers, so maybe let's give 2 actions. For its specific actions, we got pincers, which we'll use as a near weapon attack. Crush, in Shadowdark, it's a 15 strength, or target takes 1d8. In ICRPG, you can make that a hard strength check or a contested strength check, and then take ultimate. Then you could also have some kind of like status where it has like armored shell, and so the crab only takes at max 5 damage with each successful hit. So, like, just referencing off of the stat block here, you can very quickly move it over into an ICRPG format and just include what you want and fit it right in, just with relative ease. Another thing that I'm super excited about is the spells and spell casting. I mean, right away you notice that the wizard and priest in Shadowdark matches up with the intelligence and wisdom spells in ICRPG. That makes porting over that much easier. Additionally, you just get a lot more options. Some of them are covered already in ICRPG in some ways, but the variety also, you can look to. The terminology is pretty similar. It gives you some more spells that you can pull from or introduce through scrolls or different items. As well as, I really like the spell casting approach in Shadowdark, how they cast spells. It's still roll to cast, but in Shadowdark, it's a DC, it's 10 plus the spells tier, versus ICRPG, which is like the target number. But if you're like me, sometimes the spells can get a little wonky and it get a little over the top. With just rolling against like a 10 or a 12, you can get these really powerful spells, but you're not quite sure you want to go all the way to the advanced magic system. Perhaps the casting spell method here, where the target number for the spell is instead of 10 plus the tier, it's the target number plus the tier. Like, it just provides one more way to make magic the way that you want it. I'm just excited for them. Another thing, which is again similarly addresses a complaint that might come up or a concern that you might want to address with your players. I know I've had to deal with this before with some of my players, is that loosey-goosey nature of leveling in ICRPG. I love the milestone approach. I love the gear approach. I love the roller coaster that it creates. But sometimes you want to help with your players understand that, and maybe they do want something a little bit more structured, and you want to provide that as a GM. Altered State provides a really great structure already. I was talking about this with the Discord, and so you can have this process of on level 1 after a session you gain this, a milestone, and then a stat boost or some kind of item. But in Shadowdark, I really think the XP approach could be really simple to introduce. Provides that structure. Items give you a certain amount of XP as you earn them, as you return them back to town. Actions, after a session, you gain a few XP. And then at certain levels, you gain a spell, you gain a talent, an ability, you gain, things like that. And so you can give players a structured approach by using Shadowdark as a framework. And I'm excited that as I'm thinking about some games I have coming up, my players will appreciate that I've come up with something, and Shadowdark has done the heavy lifting for me. So I do think that's something that would be interesting to pull in. And the last thing that I think would be really fun is the characters themselves. I went through the other day, and call me crazy, but I built an ICRPG character using Shadowdark rules. I just used the character sheet for ICRPG though, and I ported over stat rolls and the modifiers that just became the modifiers for my character. This Fink, my Shadowdark Goblin Thief, ended up, I probably would have re-rolled him, but he ended up with -1 strength, -2 whiz, -1 charisma, +2 dex. And then I just continued doing the same process for the effort. So he ended up with +1 basic, -1 weapons, +2 guns, -3 energy and magic, -1. So if you're okay with negatives, you could go with that, or you just leave them at 0 if you're curious. But it worked. It gave me a character. I ended up with only 3 HP, which I know ICRPG typically has a heart, but 3 HP actually isn't bad. I mean, some of the funnest moments are when you're down to your last few hit points. So yeah, you're kind of really squishy at that point, even more squishy than with 10, but could still be fun. 13 defense, you got a bunch of items, abilities still work, just the talents from Shadowdark. So like dropping a Shadowdark character in an ICRPG game, while maybe crazy, I think works and could be a lot of fun. Obviously, I'm just really excited about Shadowdark. I'm really excited about how it works into ICRPG. I think as a combo, I think it's a match. And I think it's going to be something that is just going to be useful to have and reference and play and go back and forth and just plug in wherever it needs. So it's a great resource.